NFL Retro Bowl 25, an exciting collaboration between the NFL and the hit App Store game, comes exclusively to Apple Arcade. But what does this mean for the current version of Retro Bowl? What are the future implications of this licensing agreement? Will this deal positively or negatively impact you as a player? Because this is the next step for Retro Bowl. While there are a lot of positives that can be brought with this new collaboration between the NFL and Retro Bowl, there's also a lot of negatives that can be brought with it as well. So I think it's important to have a discussion as far as pros and the cons when thinking about what this deal could mean for the future. Some of the most obvious benefits of pairing up with the NFL is the amount of eyeballs that are going to be brought to this new game. You might see advertisements during NFL games, you might see Apple commercials that now feature this game as one of their flagship market products for the Apple Arcade, and with this deal that's been struck, there's a lot of validation that comes with being able to say, yes, we directly work with one of the largest brands, and having that brand recognition behind it really does enforce your game's validity. Now that this deal has been finalized, it could also reinvigorate the developers to add more attention and assets to the game. This could explain some of the hiatus on why some of the updates have been taking so long or haven't happened at all. Maybe there's just been more of a focus on trying to make sure that this deal could get done, and now that it has, we can move forward. However, that is with a glass half full approach on why there hasn't been so many assets added to the game lately, but if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, that could be why. Now, a lot of the pros that I've listed so far are really more of pros for the game itself and the developers, not so much the consumer, because the main thing that comes to mind regarding consumers is not a positive, it's a negative. This new game or update or whatever you want to consider it is not available to very many people. It's unavailable to anybody on Android and anybody that's not willing to pay the premium to get Apple Arcade. So the exclusivity of this is so minute, it really alienates the majority of the player base. Now, why would New Star Games and Retro Bowl be exclusive to those who are willing to be on Apple Arcade as opposed to being available to everybody? Mr. Krabs, you take it away. Money. Apple is by far one of the largest companies in the world. They are the company that has the reach and the capital to be able to get the licensing rights from the NFL. So in short, without Apple, this deal wouldn't be possible at all. But look at what Apple Arcade is. It is a live service payment structure. The idea of a live service game is good, but so many greedy companies have switched to live service as a way of justifying basically renting a game as opposed to owning it. You stop paying the price, you stop playing the game. And this payment structure works and incentivizes players to continue to play the game regularly, but that is under the assumption that the developers are constantly adding new features and additions to the game. That's why it's called live service. The service is continuing to be provided actively over time. And I don't really see how Retro Bowl can justify having a live service game when the updates are so sparse as is. And also, what happens to all the saves for everybody that has Retro Bowl Plus on Apple Arcade? Because Retro Bowl Plus will be replaced with the new NFL Retro Bowl 25. Is there a way to back up these saves, or does all of your progress just completely disappear? And what will the future support for regular Retro Bowl be? Will all of the updates continue to be added to NFL Retro Bowl 25 as well as regular Retro Bowl? Is there going to be any gatekeeping as far as features go, whether it be defense, career mode? Will these be locked behind a premium paywall? So now that we have an idea of what the pros and cons for this game could be, I think the bigger question really is, what is this new NFL Retro Bowl 25? If we look at the specific details of what the actual licensing post says, play with hundreds of real NFL players. However, in the limited screenshots we have, I'm able to see someone like Jay Allen being Josh Allen, or Jay Love being Jordan Love, but when it comes to the quarterback for the Vikings or the Chiefs, they're both backups. Nick Mullins potentially being a third-string quarterback, and Blaine Gabbert being a second-string. However, if we look at the tight end being TK, obviously that'd be Travis Kelce. So it seems that some players are in the game and other players might not be. But if they struck the deal with the NFLPA, any active player in the NFL is under the NFLPA, including all of their likeness, which means you should see Patrick Mahomes as a starting quarterback for the Chiefs, but you don't. Maybe I'm reading into that too much, I don't know, it just seems very weird that they don't have one of the biggest players in NFL history being one of your screenshots. Is this a complete reskin with just changed names and faces, or will there be more? And if there is more, is that a good thing? Is it a good thing to have new features in a game that's limited to such a small player base? I mean, they still haven't even added the new Retro Bowl college faces to regular Retro Bowl. Let's start with what we know as far as the differences between regular Retro Bowl and what this game is based on screenshots. Looking at the sidelines, it is not the regular Retro Bowl sidelines, it is the Retro Bowl college sidelines. A little bit smoother and higher quality for all the sideline characters, as well as midfield logos, team name name text on the end zone, the NFL logo on the 25-yard line, having multiple different variations of font for the numbers along the sidelines. And then I find this very weird. Some of the initials for offensive players have been listed above their heads, like this gold one here for the Chiefs, but on this one for the Steelers, the initials are listed on the defensive side. Could these pictures be different based on exhibition versus franchise mode, and will both of these game modes make it into NFL 25? In the last update for Retro Bowl, they did add the ability to see star players on the defensive side, but I mentioned before in a previous video that this doesn't really do anything because I don't know if the game is capable of registering different attributes for defensive players, as it seems the defense really only changes difficulty based on difficulty. And if you put it on extreme, does everybody play like a maxed out player? Do you have to play on hard in order for the attributes to be registered effectively? Or is it all cosmetic and the players don't play different at all? To wrap up this video, I want to leave you with some food for thought. What are the best and worst case scenarios for what NFL Retro Bowl 25 could be? The best case scenario, in my opinion, is that this game continues to grow like a weed. New Star Games maintains its licensing beyond Apple Arcade. The new game brings along new features, updates, and improvements, as well as being able to bring in new faces to the company of New Star and continued revenue. If New Star is able to grow and maintain licensing beyond Apple Arcade, this brings accessibility to all platforms. Android, Apple, Switch. Maybe this comes for free, $1, $5, $10, but everybody has the ability to play it. And in this world, we see growth in the Retro Bowl community, the player base, and New Star Games as a company, as well as the traction from the game and the relationship between the NFL and New Star Games. If New Star is able to continue to grow the company, we could see assets added like career mode, defense, and a ton of things that we're not capable with its limited size. But at the very least, we have accessibility for all players in a game that continues to grow. Now, if we think of what the absolute worst case scenario for this game is, I actually have two thoughts. The game itself is a reskin to the core, nothing but cosmetic behind a live service paywall. Alienating the player base doesn't cause the game to grow due to Apple Arcade's outdated pricing model. Eventually, they lose the NFL licensing and the game reverts back to Retro Bowl Plus on Apple Arcade. I think this scenario really only happens if the alienated player base doesn't buy into what this game is beyond a reskin. But that's an assumption that the game isn't new and the game doesn't provide any new features beyond just cosmetics. The more likely worst case scenario is something that could be even worse for the long-term future of Retro Bowl. The game sees a ton of success on Apple Arcade, which eventually causes it to go to yearly releases. New features, cosmetics, defense, career mode, all added to the game, but behind a paywall. I don't see this scenario being very realistic due to the fact that I think New Star Games has a lot of integrity as a smaller company. So we've covered both radical sides of each end of the spectrum, but what do I truly believe this game is going to bring? I think that NFL Retro Bowl 25 is going to bring a ton of new players that have not played the game before due to the wider audience that the NFL can actually bring. I believe this collaboration will reinvigorate the devs to add more to the game, and I do see Apple Arcade growing strictly from this game alone because this is by far the biggest flagship game that's been brought to the arcade so far. I just hope at some point in time this game is able to be brought to a wider audience. I don't like the idea of having exclusivity strictly to Apple Arcade players. But in my optimistic outlook of what this game could potentially bring, maybe this relationship between the NFL and New Star Games continues to blossom beyond Apple Arcade. And I do think that's a realistic option for this game at some point. I don't really know what success looks like for NFL Retro Bowl 25, but I truly hope whatever is added to that game is added to Retro Bowl as well. And I hope that this game isn't the only focus for New Star Games, as College Retro Bowl still has no league restart screen, and they've made it very clear that sim isn't even a priority that needs to be added until they work on actually balancing the game as a whole. We're coming up on a year now. We've got a lot of loose ends we need to tie up, and I hope that this deal for the NFL and New Star Games is the beginning of something special, and not just special for Apple Arcade players, but for everybody. Thank you all for watching.